I am Claire Mitchell, Doctor of Laws and King's Counsel.
And I am Zoe Venditozzi, Doctor of Laws, teacher and writer.
On the 8th of March 2020, International Women's Day, we launched the Feminist Witches of Scotland campaign. The Witchcraft Act, in force between 1563 and 1736, saw thousands of people, mostly women, accused and executed as witches in Scotland, in the country's biggest and most brutal miscarriage of justice. Our campaign had three aims: to get a formal state apology for those accused of witchcraft, to obtain a pardon for all those convicted, and to get a national memorial to remember those involved in the Witchcraft Act.
On International Women's Day 2022, the first of our aims was realised when First Minister Nicola Sturgeon issued a formal state apology to those accused as witches. The first formal state apology ever. We are currently working with politicians to ensure there is legislation passed to pardon those accused as witches, to change their status from convicted witches to those who ought never to have been prosecuted. We continue our work to obtain a national monument so those who suffered will never be forgotten. Join us as we speak to the experts on the witchcraft trials, both here in Scotland and further abroad, as we explore the history of women in Scotland and continue the cultural conversation of what it means to be a woman. Hello and welcome to the Witches of Scotland podcast, which this time I believe is episode 85 of 6. Hello, Claire.
Hi Zoe, how are you?
Yeah, I'm struggling on. Much like I feel everybody is at the moment, not just women. I'm hearing a lot of struggling on from people.
There's a
I'm
lot.
just back off a holiday as well, so I shouldn't be struggling on. Yeah, I'm back and then immediately have annoying things to deal with, but that is just the life of a
That
human, I think.
that's the way of life. I have just realised that these look as if I've got two bugs in my head.
I thought you did, but because it's not out with the sort of thing that you would do, I didn't question it.
I'm actually just fostering a pair of bugs.
So, for the benefit of people that are just listening rather than watching, and why would you deprive yourself of the sight of two middle-aged women sweating slightly? Claire has got two black hair clips in that do verily look like bugs against that white hair.
That's the issue. The trouble is, when I put my hair up like this, it's very reminiscent of Gary Oldman's Dracula. Not when he's young and handsome, but when he's
No.
like 700 years old.
But you lean into that look. I think it's your aesthetic. So,
Well, it ties in very well with. I'll need to tell you before we start the news. I am absolutely loving that book, Carmilla, by Sheridan Le Fanu.
yeah.
Le Fanu? Is that how you
Well, I
pronounce it?
say Le Fanu, but it's
No.
probably
No idea.
Le Fanu.
It's so good. Anyway, it's the precursor to Dracula and is all about Dracula, but it's a sapphic love story, except it's two young women. Like, it's really weird.
Well, that's making me think of somebody who I'd like to discuss briefly
Oh,
at
yeah.
the beginning, if that's okay. He is
And
an American.
Wait a second.
Hang on.
Thank you.
Claire, well, you've interrupted the flow by doing a book
I
review
did.
at the beginning.
I
This
did.
isn't
I
a books
did.
podcast. Claire, what is happening in the news?
News.
Right. I'm actually going to discuss some news to start off with. I want to talk about, well, I don't want to, I feel compelled to talk about a man whose name is Doug. I can't remember his second name because he is beneath my notice. You might be able to remember what his second name is.
Wilson.
Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson. It's a very sort of innocent sounding name. And in fact, Doug Wilson, he leans into this aesthetic of being a sort of a jovial Santa type pastor.
Exactly. Twinkle eyes.
Gives me the absolute boke, as we say in Scotland, which means he makes me feel sick. He says really, really appalling things because he's appealing to the manosphere, and he's quite crude actually. Which I don't feel is very Christ-like. I think Christ would have liked to joke. I don't think he would have been crude at the expense of women.
No.
And here's a very good example of his extremely un-Christ-like behaviour. So one of the things that Doug has enjoyed describing women as, feminists as, is small-breasted biddies. Honestly, very seriously say, how can you be a religious leader
Hmm.
when your fixation is on women's mammary glands. To me, that just is it's so illustrative of the fact that these are not serious people, but they're taken so seriously. He is, I believe, Pete Hesketh's spiritual advisor. These are the quote unquote men that are running the United States that have an enormous impact on the rest of the world. And in fact, actually, Claire, was
Hmm.
there not some legal news this week about Donald Trump? He'd finally exhausted his final avenue for an appeal against the
Yes,
lady.
in relation to the civil case, I'm sorry, I cannot remember the woman's name, but in relation to the civil case, he had basically appealed it and appealed it and appealed it, and he was told that he had no other appeal to go to, so that there's no possibility of that changing.
And am I right in saying that he has been found guilty of sexual assault towards the woman?
So, sorry, I've just Googled, and her name is E. Jean Carroll,
Of course, it is
and
E.G. Carroll, yes. And I
E.
think it's
Jean
really
Carroll,
important that we say her name because
absolutely.
she has been so brave and so insistent. And it's hard enough for any woman to report a sexual assault. Obviously, we all know that. We all know that everything's stacked against you. But to go against somebody who, even at that time, had a high public profile, had loads of money, and she knew that he would use his money to try and get out of it and to discredit her. And he's been found repeatedly of him really trying to blacken her name and say that she's a liar and that she'd made it all up and that he of course was innocent. But he has tried in every court that he can to try and appeal what he was found guilty of, which
Yep.
was clear. What was he found guilty
Yeah.
of?
So he was found guilty for sexually abusing and defaming E. Jean Carroll. And that, as you say, the appeal was overturned. What's interesting is what the statement was given on Monday. Trump's legal team said, and this is a quote from Sky News: "The American people stand with President Trump as they demand an immediate end to all of the capitalized witch hunts,
Oh, fuck
including
off. I'm
in,
sorry, I don't normally swear so early in the podcast, but that's repulsive. It's just an ongoing sort of cavalcade of offensive, just stupid, like willful ignorance
well, it's
that's
not
so self serving to these perverts.
it's not finished. Um,
Sorry.
so, in a statement reacting to Monday's decisions, Trump's legal team said, quotes, "The American people stand with President Trump as they demand an immediate end to all of the witch hunts, including the Democratic-funded travesty of the Carroll hoaxes." President, and then a second quote: "President Trump will keep winning against liberal lawfare as he continues to focus on his mission to make America great again."
There's
Trump's
this,
lawyers had argued that Carroll's allegations were propped up by highly inflammatory evidential rulings. So,
as an
um,
English teacher, there's so much language in there that if I could stop vomiting for long enough, that you could unpick everything that's there. Did they say legal lawfare?
yes, instead of warfare, lawfare.
No, I understand that. That's what they're doing.
Sorry.
But it's just such willy waving, isn't it?
Well,
It's
well, I mean, it's not, first of all, it's not a usual quote from a legal team. I mean, it sounds purely written by Donald. What I think is what I think is so fascinating about it is it stands absolutely in the face of the facts. You know,
mhm.
like President Trump will keep winning against liberal lawfare as he continues to focus on his mission. Well, you didn't. You know, you were told you
It doesn't
lost.
matter, Claire. Claire, it doesn't matter because we're living in times where men like that and the women that back them up, the women that carry water for them, they are making shit up and just insisting. It's like if you catch a small child in a lie, right? If you catch a small child and say there was a donut and now the donut is gone and the child has got powdered sugar all around their mouth, right? It's the equivalent of that. They're just going, no, I didn't, no, I didn't, no, I didn't, no, I didn't. What have you got to do, like, to prove that?
I mean,
I don't want to stretch the analogy any further, but
No.
I just can't. It's so uncivilized. It's so uncivilized. And this poor woman, E. Jean Carroll, you know, and I'm not saying that like in a, oh, poor her. I mean that like in a really pure state of empathy. She has had to get up and battle that again and again and again and again and again. He's been found guilty of sexually assaulting her. You know, how can somebody sexually assault somebody else and then not have a consequence for it? That, I mean, that's bad enough, right? But the fact that he has been found guilty of sexually assaulting her and has then carried on being the president of the United States not once but twice, and has had such a huge impact and devastation on his own country and on other countries, it's mind-boggling to me.
Well, a jury also awarded Carroll an additional $83.3 million after another defamation trial in 2024. And Trump's also appealing that ruling, but it's not yet before the Supreme Court. So it seems like litigation is still not at an end.
Just
Before you actually explode.
Yeah, there's a chance. Luckily, it's quite
Shall
damp. It's quite damp in Northeast Fife, so I think I'd be put out by the rain quite quickly.
Well, I'll move on to something else. Not going to make you feel any better though, and it's this has been covered quite a lot in the US. Not US, geez, oh, my mind's in America, in world press, which
Mhm.
is the UN Women's report, which said, quote, no country in the world has reached full legal equality for women and girls. And in fact, what they have identified is women globally hold just 64% of the legal rights of men. So all the rights that men have, women don't even have 75% of them. They've got
If you'd said to me, Zoe, guess what percentage,
yeah,
I would have probably gone for like maybe 85, you know, which would have still been absolutely appalling. Did you say 64?
64%.
Claire, you just said to me that in an attempt to not have me actually burst into flames,
Sorry,
you were going to bring more
I thought
information to the table.
you see, what I thought was if I changed the topic, you might have to start again. But what I didn't realise was
It's the same topic.
it's the same topic.
It's just the entire world.
So if people want to go and look it up, it's the UN Secretary General report ensuring and strengthening access to justice for all women and girls. The same report reveals, and this isn't going to make things any better at all, that in over half the world's countries, 54%, rape is still not defined on the basis of consent, meaning a woman can still be raped and the law may not recognise it as a crime. A girl can still be forced to marry by, by national law in nearly 3 out of 4 countries. And in 44% of countries, the law does not mandate equal remuneration of work of equal value, meaning women can still legally be paid less for the same work. And the UN Women Executive Director Sima Bahous, I'm apologising if that's incorrectly said, says, when women and girls are denied justice, the damage goes far beyond any single case. Public trust erodes, institutions lose legitimacy, and the rule of law itself is weakened. A justice system that fails half the population cannot claim to uphold justice at all. So what it says is, and you know, this is something I think that's being felt by women globally. As a backlash against long-standing commitments on gender equality intensifies, violations of the rights of women and girls are accelerating, fueled by a global culture of impunity spanning from courts to online spaces to conflict. Laws are being rewritten to restrict the freedoms of women and girls, silence their voices, and enable abuse without consequence. As technology outpaces regulation, women and girls face growing digital violence and a climate of impunity where perpetrators are rarely held accountable. In conflicts, rape continues to be used as a weapon of war, with reported cases of sexual violence rising by 87% in just 2 years. So we have an absolutely grim state of affairs at the moment, and it's absolutely what we must continue to do, to raise our voices, to join in community, and to fight these problems, because we are on a backslide, and that is
Yeah,
what's really
we're
scary.
certainly in a really, really dangerous point just now, and it's really easy to kind of just be like hopeless and just think, well, what's the point? You know, it's shit. What's the point?
Oh,
But I think that we've done a couple of things recently for Instagram that are about when we put content up, we occasionally, there's been a little rise in it. We occasionally get sort of negative comments from people that would identify themselves, I think, as Christian nationalists out in the States, and I think in the UK as just, I don't know what they'd identify themselves as. I mean, I'd identify them as arseholes, but they probably wouldn't think of themselves as that. They're largely men that think that women should shut it, and they're racists. I mean, there's no real other way to dice it. And I think that's one of the things that we need to think about. I had a really long back and forth with somebody saying that they're a woman, and I think actually she is a woman, who was really using dog whistle racist tactics.
did
And
you not think they were a bot at one point?
no, this is
Oh,
unfortunately is maybe
someone
worse
else.
since it's a real person. And she, I'm going to say she. I mean, it's horrifying to me, but as we all know, there are women that definitely carry water for the patriarchy. But she was saying that there's been an increase in rape accusations, crimes of rape and sexual assault in the city centre of Glasgow in Scotland. Okay, so that was on the back of a news article done by STV, which is Scottish television, their news, saying that there'd been a really marked and terrible increase in the last year, I think it was, of hate crimes, specifically racist hate crimes in Scotland. Now, that's really disturbing to me. That's terrible that that figure is going up, right? The hate crimes. So this person jumped in along with a bunch of men, Scottish men, unfortunately, well, purporting to be Scottish men, saying that, well, you know, why are there crimes being reported about crimes against Scottish people? Now, I mean, what is Scottish people? It's a really racist, really loaded phrase. Well, then they shouldn't be here if they don't like to be treated like that. You know, that kind of commentary, which I think a year ago you just wouldn't have seen as much, and people would have been really like, what? But now it's become so normalised. And this woman was saying that sexual assault crimes have gone up in Glasgow city centre. And what she is doing with dog whistle racism is she is saying that is because there's been an increase in asylum seekers in Glasgow, right? But she's not spelling that out. And that's how dog whistle racism works, right? So I supplied her with this, but she didn't seem terribly interested in it. But the definition of dog whistle politics, dog whistle sort of commenting and rhetoric, is it's a bit like when you blow a whistle for a dog, humans can't hear it, but dogs can, right? So when you do dog whistle rhetoric, not everybody understands what it is that you're saying, but there's some people who are like the dogs that understand the political point or the racist point or the sexist point or the homophobic point that you're making. And they understand what it is that you're saying. So they know that what you're saying is there's an increase in black people in Glasgow. Therefore, there's an increase in rapes. And it's because these people are uncivilized and they feel they can do rapes, which is so abhorrent to me. It's
Well,
absolutely disgusting.
it's also just a false correlation.
It is. And like then
It's just
people,
it's just taking two disparate facts and
yeah,
and just
putting
sticking
them
them together.
together. And so as a consequence of that, there are some quote unquote men that have formed quote unquote patrols that are going about Glasgow dressed in black with hoodies and all the rest of it, that are there to keep women safe.
Well, I'm sure women are going to feel really
If
safe
I
if they see
if I
men.
saw a group of men, any group of men coming towards me, I would not feel safe. I wouldn't feel safe, and that's terrible. That's not man bashing. That's just common fucking sense, right? So if you saw a big group of men coming towards you, and you know, make no bones about it, they're wanting to look intimidating because really these are like 5-year-old children who are looking for a wee scrap. Maybe not five. They're more like third years. They're more like sort of 14 or 15-year-old boys that are looking for a fight in the playground because they've got all this sexual energy that's being thwarted, and really what they want to do is get together with women, but they can't get women. So it turns into, I think in this case, racism. And that's a hill I'm prepared to die on. I think a lot of the root of racism is about sexual inadequacy and sexual jealousy. I've said it before, and I'm just going to keep saying it. I do think that's a really big factor. Not the only factor, but I think that's a big factor of it. And I think this whole idea about we are protecting women and girls is such fucking lies, right? I'm sorry I'm swearing a lot today. We might have to put a warning on. It's lies, right? These are not people that are then fundraising for different rape services. No. These are not people that are pushing for change to the law. These are not people that are talking to men.
They're not funding. They're not funding women's.
Like that, you know, talking about consent.
Women's aid.
These are the very worst. These are the men that we are not safe with, and that's been shown by the amount of domestic violence accusations and also convictions of men that have marched in various protests in Britain against so-called illegal immigrants. And it makes me feel sick, because I just think, if you're going to talk like that, then just be fucking honest. Just say, yeah, I'm racist. Just say it, and then at least we know. Don't pretend that you give a shit about women when actually you are the biggest danger to women, right? The biggest danger women face is always their intimate partners or family members,
sadly,
or people that are in a position of trust, like priests or teachers or, you know, leaders of youth groups or whatever, right? Now, I'm not saying obviously all those people are a danger, but that's where the dangers come from. It's people in positions of trust, right? It's not usually stranger danger. I know that we've made an enormous thing about that, and of course it does happen. Of course, strangers do sometimes attack women. I'm not negating that at all, but you're at far more risk of the people that you choose to have a relationship with. And we see it happening again and again. We've seen all the cases, like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of reporting about what's happening in Ireland and about the amount of women. There's a really shockingly high amount of women killed by intimate partners there, or by family members, sometimes sons. And we're going to have a guest on quite soon who's going to talk about that. So we'll come back to it. But these are white populations, right? These are populations in Scotland. I think is something like 92% white. I mean, anyway, it's not something that I'm ever going to shut up about, ever. Sometimes women are told, well, just ignore it, right? But I see, as a white woman, right, we have got such a responsibility to get our shit together and be actively anti-racist, right? Because lots of white women have benefited from racism and continue to benefit from racism, right? So I feel that that's one thing that I can do. I can use my big loud voice. I can use the position I've got to stand up for people. And more than anything, it's not because I think I can change people's minds on there necessarily. I think if you're the kind of repulsive person that's going to type those things, you're gone, right? What I'm doing it so that if there is a person who is black or brown that is reading those comments, they know at least there's one fucking person in the comments that thinks it's wrong and thinks that the white community that does that is wrong. And I'd written something last night about somebody fundamentally misunderstanding what racism is. And somebody who I know, who's an acquaintance who's black, liked the comment that I'd made. And I just thought, because I'm doing this so you know that there are people that are fighting for it, because racism is so insidious. And if you know anybody that is black or brown, I'm prepared to go out on a limb and say all of them have experienced racism. And it can be from small things like people turning away from you to big things like, people spray painting horrible words on your house, or physical attacks, or even, as we know, murders. And if we don't stand up and say, no, we're not having it, it's never going to change and it's never going to stop. And this is the time now where we all have to get together and say, no, we're not having it. I'm going to shut up now. I tried to do gardening today, Claire, to try and bring down my blood pressure. I'm not even joking. This isn't a joke that I'm doing. I bought gardening stuff. I started doing gardening. It started pissing with rain. And I said, Zoe, it's okay. You're not going to melt. You can work in the rain. But it got to a point where I had to come in because I knew I was recording with you and you were going to make me do a visual one.
I thought you were going to say that you had a hoe in your hand and you just started hitting the ground really, really hard.
No, but I tell you what, you see those vines with the prickles on them that I was pulling out the ground. They got what for, I'll tell you that much. I did a whole bunch of weeding of vines. My garden's like a jungle.
Shall we move on to some better in the news?
Honestly, Claire, though, I feel like I could cry. And I'm saying that to you. I'm not going to cry. Don't worry. I'm not going to be that type of emotional. But I know that we get contacted all the time by people, particularly by women, that are just like, I just feel really upset. I just feel really upset with the way things are.
We have to, what we do is we have to form community, and that community does have to be intersectional. It has to, because, if things are bad for women worldwide, things are bad for women of colour. I know that's sometimes a phrase now not used. People use black and ethnic
Global majority.
minority, global
Yeah.
majority. Um, but yeah, it's doubly so. So I think what we have to focus on, what you're doing is when you're fighting with them online, you're showing that there are people out there who don't agree with those sorts of things, and that is really, really helpful. What's also helpful is just standing together as a community,
Mhm.
and
Looking
that's
out for your neighbours,
that's what we're trying
looking
to
out when you're moving through public transport and like,
grow.
people are being treated badly, or do you know what I mean? I just,
You
not
know, is
everybody is bold and would get involved in things in the way that I maybe would. But I do think just keep your eyes open. Just
yeah,
just have your eyes open.
yeah,
Like I mean that like sort of obviously literally when you're moving through the world, but also when you're on social media. And I'm not saying that everybody has to battle everybody all the time. I'm not saying, that a lot of them aren't bots or whatever. But I think if you can say something to show that you're on the right side of history, then it behooves us to do that. And I think I'm heartened. I do get strength from the really, really nice contact that we get from readers and listeners and people that like the tartan and people that have just, unfortunately for them, stumbled across some TikTok that we've made. But I do appreciate that. I do appreciate people getting in touch. And there
yeah.
are so many really brilliant, brilliant people in the world. And we just have to remember that unfortunately the way things are skewed at the moment is those empty vessels making a lot of noise who are in the minority and they're just emboldening people. And most of us are good. And we just really, really need to band together and just really look out for each other.
Zoe, I'm going to move on to something which is good news.
Okay, what is it?
Some people we know are bringing out witch type
Oh,
books.
this is good news. This is good news, right? And I'll tell you part of the thing that's good news about it is that we are going to be talking to them on our podcast very soon, right? So,
Yes.
do you want me to say who they are and what the books are called?
You go, Zoe.
Okay, so both of these people are featured in our. These are non-fiction books. I'm going to talk about first. They're both of them are featured in previous podcasts, and we interviewed them, and then we talked about their work and their ideas and their opinions in our book as well. How to Kill a Witch: A Guide for the Patriarchy. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's still available. One of those people is Mariam. Sorry, I'm mixing their names together because now I'm feeling excited because I'm starting to regulate again. Malcolm Gaskill, who's written this brilliant book that I really enjoyed called Worlds of Fear and Wonder: Living with the Supernatural, Past and Present. It's
Oh,
so interesting because it's about the fact that we as humans have always had the supernatural as part of our mental landscapes, and we probably always will. It's a really interesting book that looks at right back through time up to the modern day, talks about witches, but lots of other things as well. Super cool book. And
I
the other
can't
book
wait.
is Marion Gibson's new book. Marion, as you'll remember, was the first historian who said to us, of course the Scottish witch trials were gendered. Of course they were. If there were 85% they were women, of course it was gendered. So we love Marion for that
We
and we
do.
check her all the time for it. She's such a great writer, very clever, very engaging. Malcolm is, I would use those two words to describe him as well. Love their books. So her new book is called Witchland,
Love that
and
title.
it's got a really cool hot pink title cover page, and that I think comes out in August, and I think Malcolm's comes out round about the same time, but we'll firm up those dates for you. And as I say, we're going to have them both on the show. We're also going to be talking to big pal of the show as well, Mary Kidd, about her new book, which is called, what's it called, Claire? It's not News from Scotland. Is it
Uh,
News of witches.
News of Witches. It's
The
News of
witches.
Witches.
Which this is entirely the menopause because I can't remember the titles of anything or anybody's name anymore. But I've read that book and I really enjoyed it. And it's kind of a bit like crimey, sort of, but it's set during the witch trials. It's very clever. Mary's a lovely writer. I love her writing. So she's going to come on and talk to us soon. And I think her book's maybe out in August as well. So there's a lot happening, but
I,
we will update with them.
yeah, I'm about halfway through her book, Poor Creatures, which is
Oh
so good.
yeah.
And
That's
again,
about Franken the right well, it's about Mary Shelley when she
yes,
came to Dundee before she wrote Frankenstein.
yes,
Yeah.
it's so good, really interesting. And also, not that we've had her on the podcast, I would love to have her on. Mona Sholey, who wrote In Defence of Witches, that was her sort of international book. She's got a
Yeah.
new book coming out, and I love the title. It's called How to Resist Guilt on What's Holding Women Back.
Can I tell you my theory about guilt?
Yes.
Guilt doesn't actually exist naturally within humans
Mm.
in the way that like anger or sadness or loneliness or happiness or all those things exist. I think that guilt is something that is just entirely man-made, and I mean man-made, as a means of control. I don't think we actually naturally would feel guilt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think that if you do something wrong,
Mm.
then and you've done something wrong, then you should just try and make it up, and you should say sorry at the very least, and then you should just like move on if you've made your best attempt to make it right. And I think that if you don't realize that you've done wrong, then there's just some sort of psychological problem with you, and that's not a thing that you should feel guilt about. So I
Yeah.
think guilt is used as a way to manipulate women into being quiet and being small, and it's just a way of making women feel bad about things they've done.
I
Men
mean,
too.
meant to. I suppose the way I think about guilt is obviously coming from a professional background of are you guilty of something or are you not guilty of something?
Now that's not an emotion though.
No, exactly. I've never really thought about it. Interesting.
What religion were you raised as, if you don't mind me asking?
Catholic. You would think that I would know a lot, but Catholicism for me was,
Like
as I've
many
said
things that
before,
you've encountered, it just bounced off you.
yeah. Also, mixed up with my gran that would go to mass and read the tea leaves.
Mm.
So I've it's, I, just pick the good bits. That's what I say.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go with life generally. I just think guilt is just used to control people, whereas
Well,
happiness isn't,
I am
anger
so.
isn't. You know.
Oh no, but anger is, like incels. Their rage is being baited to everyone.
Yeah,
What?
no, definitely, but not in a guilt solely exists for that, right? Whereas anger doesn't exist to be manipulated, if you know what I mean.
Oh yes, I see. Like oh, that will send me down a rabbit
Deep
hole
thoughts.
of.
I've had this thought for a very long time, and I sometimes express it to people, and it falls upon deaf ears. And I'm definitely at a point now where I don't even care. But I'm
Well,
right.
I'll get you this book because it says the
Okay.
book's an insightful dive into inverted commas the relentless inner critic. Maybe that's what the problem is because I don't have one of them.
I mean, Claire, I have got a relentless inner critic, but it's
Yeah.
not about guilt. It's more about, fatness. I'm laughing. I'm
Yeah.
really laughing.
But not on the inside. I heard this tremendous idea, right, which was that you consider you're not your body.
Uh-huh.
So you consider your body separately from you, and
Yeah.
you think, I have to take care. I want to take care of this body and do nice things for it. And I thought that's a nice idea. Like, as opposed to thinking you're your body, thinking that your body's something separate from you in your consciousness, and it's your job to keep your body well and healthy and do things for it.
Yeah, but you see that, again, don't want to get too deep here. That for me is part of the problem. It's about a disconnect between mind and body for me. So it's like
Oh,
my mind, all good. I'm quite perfectly happy. I'm not saying I don't have more to learn and more to develop. I'm fine with my mind and I'm confident about that. It's
yeah.
the body who I view as being separate and sometimes a bit of a traitor. Now that I've started to take an exercise a bit more seriously, trying really hard to work with her. So I'm just like, come on, girl. And then we try to work together. So I feel like we're coming together, but I feel like also I'm somebody who dissociates very easily, and I feel those two things are quite separate.
Okay.
Gosh,
Yes.
you didn't think it was going to be a therapy session today, did you, Claire?
I know. No, I wonder if anybody is still listening at this point.
I know, I'm really sorry. Right, we'll pull it back to the normal way of things.
Yes.
And now we'll take this very seriously. I mean, all that stuff is really serious. It's just maybe sort of unbridled emotion. But and also this is a serious thing that we should feel unbridled emotion about. But it's a section of the show where we remember somebody who's been accused. And the person this week is really interesting, which is maybe the wrong word. But her name was Janet Kennedy, and she was from Dumfries. And Janet Kennedy was accused of having been approached by somebody to bewitch somebody else to death, basically. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So there was no evidence for it, apparently. Again, this is from the Survey of Scottish Witchcraft. So as usual, they've only got what they've got to work with. And there's some information, but not anywhere near as much as I would like, really, to have a full idea of what happened here. But she had been approached by somebody who had tried to kind of, I suppose, contract her to kill somebody with witchcraft. But then the person that approached her said that they didn't really mean it, that they just did it to prove that that she was in fact a witch. And she was held in, it was Mistress Mowat that she was consulted by somebody else to kill, basically. And then she was held for a year. The Kirk session found, it says here are the notes, it says Kirk session found several scandalous and horrid things, and although they tried to get evidence, could not get things sufficiently proven. So again, just to say that it was a legal case, and in this case they found that they didn't have enough evidence. They did, however, keep her in for a year, and they referred the case to the presbytery, who advised consulting the King's Advocate and the General Assembly of the Church. And ultimately, she was held in prison for 1 year and she was released, but she was then banished. And we don't know what went on to happen to her, because we do know that there were cases of, if you were banished and you had to go and move to a different, community, you would be accused again because there would be suspicion over you. I really wish at some point there'd be some treasure trove that was found, and it was that different women or different primary sources had written down what actually happened at the time. I know that that's probably never going to happen, but I really wonder what it would be like to be banished. And I'm surprised that there's not been, that I'm aware of, a good novel about a woman being banished and what that's like. I'm sure that'll come out soon. But that was Janet Kennedy in Dumfries. So today we remember Janet Kennedy, who was held for a year on charges that couldn't be proved and was banished, but we don't know what happened to her next. So without any further ado, let's introduce today's guest. Hello, and we are delighted to have with us today a guest who is all the way from America but is currently living in Scotland, and she'll explain that to us. But our guest today is artist, and I believe you described yourself as a technologist, which I love, so I want to know more about what that actually means. So we have got Victoria Bradbury. Hello, Victoria.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on.
We're delighted to have you here. So first of all, if you want to just tell us a wee bit about who you are and why it is we've invited you onto the podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. So, as you said, I'm an artist and maker, and I work in new media, which basically means I use technologies like games, virtual reality, interactive systems, and digital tools as creative materials. My work sits between art design and computation, and I really think through making. So, for artists and designers, building something is really a form of research and critical thinking. And so my research explores ideas around technology, agency, and power. Who gets to shape technology? How programming code can carry cultural assumptions and biases, and how interactive systems really influence the way we experience the world, increasingly so. I'm especially interested in games and immersive media, and these as artistic and storytelling spaces. And I often use humor in my work as well, because interactive systems naturally create a kind of back and forth exchange with a viewer participant that can really be playful or lighthearted, even when the project itself is dealing with quite serious subject matter. Back in the States, I'm the chair of new media at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, and I'm currently a US-UK Fulbright Commission Scholar at Glasgow School of Arts, School of Innovation and Technology. So I'm in Glasgow for 6 months, and it's been really, really wonderful. It's really really been exciting to work within Scotland's incredible games and creative technology community. There's such an awesome community here. But I've really long been interested in the connection between technology and magic, and so how technologies can shape belief, perception, and agency. And my current research at GSA focuses on histories of witch persecution in Scotland through interactive and textile-based artworks, some of which are behind me, we can talk about a little later. A lot of my earlier works have been around witch persecution. Some of them, I work on a lot of different topics, but particularly around the story of my 10th great-grandmother, Mary Perkins Bradbury, who was convicted of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials.
Oh my Wild. God. Really amazing, because when we do events in Scotland, we've been told by various historians it's very hard to prove as a Scottish person that you've got a descendant because we just don't have the records. So you might have an idea of a surname and a location, and you might think, well, my family's been there for generations, but you can't prove it in the same way that Americans are able to prove it because your paperwork is so much better. So when people get in touch with us all the time and say, well, my relative, my 10 times great grand or whatever, it's really interesting because you've got that line. So have you always known about your relative?
That's a great question. I have. I remember being in primary school and sort of telling the other kids in my class, my grandmother was a witch, in the coat closet. Because, my thinking around it was very simplistic, and it was just something that I knew. My dad has been doing genealogy. It's become much more popular nowadays, but my dad was doing it analog in the 70s and 80s, and we used to drive. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but we used to drive through New England, and our family holidays, we'd stop at a bunch of graveyards and look at Bradbury's gravestones that went way back. So yeah, I did always know about it since I was a kid, and it was when I became an artist that I started to just think, what is that all about? What really happened there, and started to really think critically about it.
That is incredible that you've been able to get your area, which sounds to me very 21st century, and to go back to have inspo from that time. Some questions already I want to ask just about your family history. Did you always know about it, or was it your dad that found the connection in the lineage? Or has it been passed down from generation to generation as a kind of lore in your family?
I think the latter. So my dad had found out about it through a great uncle, and then he passed that on to us. And I have quite a large extended family, so everyone sort of knows about the story within the family. Interestingly, she's also an ancestor of Ray Bradbury, who is very distantly related to me. He's like my sixth cousin, 3 times removed. So we call him Uncle Ray in my family, but I mean he's barely.
That's so cool, though.
See if you can claim Ray Bradbury. It doesn't matter how far away he is.
I mean, it's so distant. But interestingly, she is a common ancestor, and I believe he knew about her story as well. I mean, she had 10 children, Mary Perkins Bradbury, and so she has hundreds of descendants. And so there's many people that can claim her as an ancestor.
Sorry, can I just say, for those listening on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, you said she had 10 children. Zoe's face was an absolute treat. Worth going onto YouTube and having a look at. She was like, oh no,
no, not now, but certainly not in those days. I
know. Well, the thing is, people have asked, if she had been, because she was convicted. She was one of the 30 people convicted in Salem, not killed though. She had an execution date, and her family was able to. It's not clear how she was released from the charges. There's different stories around that, but I lost my train of thought.
No, sorry. Can you tell us her story first of all before we come to the present day and find out what you're doing?
Absolutely, yeah. So she was 77 years old when she was convicted, and so the point that I was trying to make was that she had already had her 10 children at that point. So yeah,
she's had a hard enough life at that point. She's had her punishment.
All of her many descendants would still have been born had this not happened, because she had long had her children. But yeah, she was 77 years old. She was accused by her neighbors, Richard Carr and Zerubbabel Endicott, of having gone into her gate and a blue boar ran out. And so, the Salem archives are so detailed, and I have her testimony, I have her accuser's testimony, I have the petition that her neighbors, hundreds of people came forward and petitioned on her behalf, which I think helped to save her from execution. But one of the accusations that Richard Carr made was, I saw Miss Bradbury come into her gate, turn the corner, and immediately there darted out of her gate a blue boar. And so she was accused of having turned into a blue boar, essentially, was one of the main accusations against her. She was also, there were some other accusations thrown in. She was seen as maybe controlling ships. She was seen on the windlass of a ship bound for Barbados, which would have been a slave ship. So there were several different accusations, but the one that has really stood out about her and that I have worked on and others have worked on around her story was that accusation of having turned into a blue pig.
Interesting.
That is crazy. So let's get this. So she had transformed. That's one of the accusations against her, and the other was that she was presumably involved in some kind of weather witchery if she's on a ship.
Yes.
And presumably she was seen to be on that ship whilst at the same time never having left the land. Is that right?
Exactly. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
because
correct.
one of the interesting things about Salem, and one thing that Salem looked to English witch trials for, was allowing evidence in of people saying that they saw people in two places at the one time, like people bifurcating or whatever, however you would describe it, so that even though you could prove that you were at land or asleep or something of the likes, evidence was still allowed to be led that people saw you at sea. So effectively,
that's spectral evidence, isn't it?
Spectral evidence, thank you, Zoe. But to a criminal lawyer like me, the idea that you could never prove an alibi is very distressing. You're like, but I can show I was somewhere else.
It's distressing for everyone, Claire.
I know. It's distressing professionally for me.
Yeah.
A rock solid alibi, and that still doesn't work. Come on now.
Not ideal at all.
But sorry.
Yeah, but those connections that you mentioned, though, between the European witch trials and what happened in Salem, and then also connections that go back. So some of the research I'm doing now at GSA with the current project that you can see behind me has to do with the Paisley witch trials. I know a lot of people have done work around that, but what I found quite interesting was that the accusations that happened in Paisley were thought to have been influenced by Salem. So the writing by Deodat Lawson then came back to some of the ministers in Paisley, and there were influences the other way. So that is super interesting to me in terms of researching media histories and how information spreads, that these witch trials in different places were being influenced by one another, even at this very early time in media history.
So can I ask, we know that these accusations were made, that she went to trial, you have the transcripts. Was she allowed to speak in her own name? Did she give evidence?
She was. Yeah. I have her trial testimony. And her husband spoke as well. So I have his testimony. So yeah, she was able to come to the stand and speak on her own behalf.
Okay, and presumably she denied all the charges against her. She hadn't falsely confessed or anything like that?
No, she did not. She denied the charges. She talked about, her religion and how important it was to her, and no, she denied what she was accused of.
And do we know why? Have you got any idea why her neighbours accused her? I mean, was there any sort of bad blood between them? Was she unusual in some way?
Those details I'm not completely sure of. I think some information has gone around about maybe there having been some kind of land dispute or something having to do with perhaps like a failed marriage with one of the children in a neighbor. It's not entirely clear why those accusations were made, but oftentimes it was having to do with something neighborly or not so neighborly that had occurred. But I've made several projects about Mary's story that I'd love to tell you a bit more about.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, please do.
Sorry, can I just check, just to finish off the sort of law part of her story, just my geekiness. She went to trial, she was convicted, so presumably she was held for some time in custody. Is that right?
She was indeed, and she actually had an execution date. And
my
that's
God.
where it's not clear because, did someone escape her from prison? Was there a bail? Was there potentially a bribe? All these different ideas have been thrown around about how exactly she escaped her execution. Was she hit? The way that I've always thought of it was she was hid away by family and friends until things kind of blew over. And then people moved on, and she was lucky to be able to die at 85, a decade later, of old age. And so yeah, she did escape execution.
I mean, can I also say, just entirely separately, you've got some good genes going there. For a woman of that age to have 10 children and to have survived to 85 was some going at that time.
Yeah, I know. Just it amazes me that people lived that long at that time.
Okay, so then, sorry, so I'm glad, and I'm really glad to hear that she was one of the people whose stories ended very differently. So I interrupted you, sorry. Tell us more about your projects that you've done.
Yeah, so I started focusing on that idea of the blue boar story, and in 2009 I created a blue boar installation. And the way that worked was so I also work with textiles, and I created a embroidered book, and it was called the Colonial Vegetables Sewn Sampler Book. And that was on a podium. And so a person who was interacting with the installation would come up and look at the book. And in the book, I used an embroidery technique where you move the fabric underneath the sewing machine to draw the different vegetables that would have been in Mary's door garden, because the garden was where the accusation occurred of her having turned into the blue boar. And so I drew a cabbage, some leeks, potato, radish, onion, and essentially I wrote this poem where the vegetables are saying, "I saw Miss Bradbury, as I daily do, enter her patch to pick tubers for stew. She'd gathered an armful of potato and radish when a brown boar trot by, looking wild and maddish. The fast-passing boar filled the old woman with fright. She fell on her back and she lay there all night, with a rump on the tansy and her head on the teasel. That horse spooked the boar. He's a perjuring weasel." So I wanted to kind of flip the story and think about how the vegetables, because here she's an old woman, she was picking vegetables in her garden. What did they actually see? What was their perspective on this story? And so they say that they saw a brown boar run out. Essentially, I picture her picking the vegetables in her garden, and she just fell over, and maybe a pig ran through and the neighbors saw it. So I'm trying to distill
that. The pig knocked her over. So you see her come in, her feet go up in the air, she disappears from sight, and then the boar. You can see from the outside how somebody could see that, and it would probably be like a TikTok video now, racking up millions of views, of an old lady turning into a boar.
Exactly. So I do try to think, was there something that actually did happen that somebody saw that they could have talked about having seen? So I really think about perspectives. But so the viewer is looking at this book, this fabric book, they're paging through it, reading that poem. And then as they do, they look in front of them and there's a sculptural boar with a kind of blue scintillating video skin, and they see their own face projected onto the boar. And so it's that idea of bringing the viewer into the story and saying, I'm always trying to say with the stories with the works about witch persecution that, this could happen to anybody, this could happen to you, this could happen to any person. And so when someone's looking at the work, they really become a part of that story.
Absolutely. And we obviously much later than you, when we came to it as well, think that's a really central tenet, isn't it, to remind folk that these people aren't special in any way or different. They're just the same as us.
Exactly. So that was the 2009 interactive installation. In 2019, I created another project based on Mary's story called Blue Boar VR. And this is a virtual reality project, which completely immerses a viewer. And so they're in the VR headset and they're considering the story, Mary's story, from 3 different perspectives. So they can play the story as Mary, they can play the story as her accusers, or they can play the story as the blue boar. So that's the 3rd character in the story. So really trying to think through, how can you look at this story from those different perspectives, and how can you then put a viewer into those perspectives?
That's very useful, because one of the things that we talk about a lot is putting yourself in the shoes of the people that were accused, or indeed of the accusers who were involved in sort of the machinery of the accusations. And when we wrote our book, we did fictional bits of the book, fictional sections, which are where we wrote about not the accused. So it was about the people that were involved around it. So you could understand, well, how might they have come to this pass where you can accuse an old lady, a mother of 10, of turning into a boar? How do you get into that headspace and understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, Mary, you asked about Mary's testimony before. She said, "I am wholly innocent of this wickedness," and so she was really sticking with that, um, with her innocence throughout the trial. But I bring that into the virtual reality piece. You can play as Mary. And so again, being able to put yourself in the shoes of that person who's been accused and think about what was this day-to-day thing she was doing. And so in the game, you're in the garden, you come out of her house, you go into the garden, and you're meant to pick carrots, and you have to put the carrots in a little basket that you're carrying. Just to describe the way that the scene looks, I can share screen really quick and just show you the scene.
Now,
but
for
just
people that are
Yeah.
listening to the podcast, you can see this if you go to YouTube, and if you subscribe to the Witches of Scotland channel, you'll be able to see this as well as listen to it.
That almost sounded totally professional there, Zoe. If you subscribe to your channel.
I'm not a moomin.
Not able to grab the correct screen, but I can describe the scene. So there, I used a texture of textiles, kind of embroidery on the digital artifact of the virtual reality game. It has a bit of a Minecraft look because everything is blocky, because essentially in embroidery you have that really blocky style.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's that embroidery texture across the headset and across the whole scene that I built. And so when you're playing as Mary, you come out into her garden, you pick the carrots, you put them in your basket, and then you carry the basket back to a pear tree and you pick a pear. And the picking of the pear causes this brown boar to run through and essentially knock you over as the player. When you get knocked over, the screen goes black and you go back to the home screen. So that's all that happens when you're playing as Mary. You do see your neighbors in the distance kind of coming up on horseback right before you pass out. When you play the game as the accusers, so Richard Carr and Zerubbabel Endicott, you get to ride on horseback, which I was really excited about as a game developer, to let the player ride horseback. And so you ride through the town, you see Mary's house up ahead, you ride up to her gate, and you see her come out, pick the carrots, go to the pear tree, and then this blue boar dashes in front and spooks your horse. So from their perspective, the boar looks blue.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then as the boar. Yeah, so the third one, as the boar, you end up, instead of being down on the ground, you're hovering above the town and above Mary's house and the whole scene. And what you can do as the boar is sort of reforest Salem Village. So you use the VR controller to sort of grow trees and reforest the town.
Oh, so
That's
is
cool.
the boar like a spiritual animal type thing? Then you're not getting it from the eyes of. I thought what you were going to say was that you were going to see it from a boar seeing an old lady pluck a juicy pear and think, I'm having some of that, just charging at her.
Absolutely. I did, I really thought carefully about what the boar could be and what the boar could represent. And I really was thinking about, the complexities of, Mary and the other Salem villagers as colonizers, as building this town in the middle of this territory. And so what could the boar as a mystical creature do better than just to reforest the town and just kind of erase what had happened there.
Nice.
It's interesting.
Amazing. And does that bring us to your present day piece of work that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to talk about what I'm doing here at GSA. So I've been working in virtual reality for a number of years, about 8 years, and teaching it. And here at GSA, I was able to have this period of time to really focus on a new project, which was very exciting for me to have that support. Plus, the School of Innovation and Technology is amazing, full of really fantastic researchers and facilities that I had access to. So I came here with some idea of what I would do, and then was able to kind of think through and start making and building things and thinking about what I would work on. In that time, the early part of my time here, I came across the story about Paisley, and of course, it's a really interesting story. Loads of artists and folks have picked up on it and are working around it. But I was super interested in the fact that. So just to summarize for the listeners, the accusations in Paisley began in 1697 when the 11-year-old Christian Shaw displayed unusual symptoms and several members of the community were accused of witchcraft. And Shaw remains a key figure in the story, though her role in the accusations was really amplified by those in positions of power. And then the ensuing trials led to the deaths of 8 people, 4 women and 4 men, the Paisley 8. And Paisley later became really known for its thread industry and textile industry. And I was super interested in the fact that Christian Shaw grew up to be Christian Miller, who started the Bargarin Thread Company.
Yep, amazing.
And so behind me, what you see, so I started working with textiles when I first got here. At the same time, I was developing a game. And so the figures that you see on the black and white tapestry behind me, these are the Paisley 8 that I've created as metahumans in the Unreal Engine software that I'm using to develop the game. So I developed the 8 of them, I developed their costumes, and then I started to screenshot them and had them printed at the Center for Advanced Textiles at GSA, which is an amazing digital textiles facility that they have. So I've been having these printed, these images of the front and back of each of the figures. And then this weaving that you see here is an image of Christian Shaw as the CEO, essentially, of the Bargarin Thread Company. And I wanted to portray her. The way I created this was I used Adobe Firefly which is Adobe's AI product, to create an AI representation, a bunch of AI representations of what portrait would have been painted of her in the style at that time, of the style of painting in Scotland at that time. How would she have presented herself as the owner of this company? And so I created this image, photoshopped it. One thing that's really key about AI right now in terms of image making is the way it messes up hands. I don't know if you guys...
really like to talk to you about this as a slight rabbit hole. Can I pitch it?
Yes, let's talk about hands and AI.
In our book, we used an image that had been created by a young Scottish artist called Rosie Andrew, who had just graduated, or was just about to graduate, in fact, from DJ CAD, which is Dundee's art school.
Yes.
It's a great school. We've got a very good friend, Mel, who teaches there. Who works there. I think she's more sort of research now. Sorry, Mel. But so Rosie is this fantastic artist who I'd come across on Instagram, who when she was doing her undergraduate, so she's probably about maybe 19, she'd created this body of work for something she was doing in her degree that was photographs. I'm doing rabbit ears around it. Photographs of the accused during the period. Now I understood this. I completely get what she's doing. She understood the history of portraiture. She understood the history of photography. She understood that by creating these images, because AI can make such freaky looking humans, it sort of got across to me as the viewer the uncanniness of being accused of being otherworldly and in league with the devil. So it was sort of like tabloid photography almost, so that viewers who maybe can't make a connection without a visual in the modern world were able to kind of see it and go, oh my God, these were real people. But also she was kind of heightening the whole spooky supernatural aspect. So we've got one of her images in our book, and we have had so much hassle from a small amount of people that are like, how dare you deprive a real artist of work by using AI? Now, I know that AI is here to stay. Just like painters said, oh my God, photography's ruined everything. Just like photographers said, oh my God, Photoshop's ruined everything. It's a new, there's a responsibility with new technology and everything. But can you talk a bit about this, please, for people that just go AI slop and then have accused us of then writing the whole book using AI, which obviously we haven't, because
it would have been more coherent.
If we'd used AI to write it, we wouldn't have had to have done as much fact checking. But anyway.
No, absolutely. No, this is always a sticking point. It's a huge sticking point right now. But look, my field of new media, we use this word new media isn't new, technologies aren't new, the paintbrush was a technology, but in my field, we're always interrogating technology, whatever that is, whatever is coming around. And so artists have been working with AI since long ago. Artists have been working with technology. As you say, photography was hugely controversial for many years because it was going to take away from what painters could do. It was going to, and we've embraced photography in such a massive way as a society, in the arts, etc. AI is just another technology. I realize there's more complexities to it than that, but it's the current thing that is very controversial. It's very concerning in so many ways, but as artists, we can't not look at it critically and use it as a critical tool to say, hey, this is what this is what we can do with this, and to really make exciting work around that and critical work around that. And so artists are going to use AI, and hopefully they're looking at it in a critical way. Now, I used Adobe Firefly to create this. Adobe Firefly is really specific in terms of the way it works with copyright and artists' images. They're really careful about how they're using artists' images, and I know that's a huge concern for artists.
Of course, like the ethical side of stealing. Yeah.
Stealing other artists' images or aesthetics and then using that to create the algorithm. That's super problematic. But again, if we as artists and writers don't interrogate these technologies, who will? We're the people that really need to be using them and thinking critically about how they can be used and telling interesting stories with them in order to, to present that to the public and say, this is what this could be.
Because if we don't get involved with it critically, then it's going to be used by what I'm going to call bad actors that will then use it for all the things that people are really scared about. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like a massive AI fangirl or anything. I think there's loads of stuff that's incredibly problematic about it. But we are intelligent, thinking people who still, we're moving into the future. It's gonna keep moving regardless of what we do. So I think as artists, as a writer, I used to have a friend that seemed to sort of delight in saying to me, oh, you're going to become obsolete because everything's going to be written by AI. I mean, it can't replicate what a human heart and human thought is going to do. It can copy stuff. And I think that's why a lot of the time when we see written AI, if you're a critical thinker, you can often go, that doesn't quite ring true. There's something that's not right there. So when you're talking about the hands, that's obviously something that people often look at with visual AI, where they go, oh, I can tell because she's got 17 fingers. That's not real.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing about technology is like we can think about the magic of technology in a really positive way. Like, how technology can make something happen that a magician or a vaudeville performer might have made happen. And I think that's really interesting, but I also think that it's super important for people who understand technology and work with technology as a tool to also reveal how technology works and to show it really plainly. And also as a teacher and as a professor, I'm really interested in teaching students how to use technology as a creative tool and not just be a consumer, because that's where I think AI and a lot of these really advanced tools can get us in the long run, is not being critical thinkers and not being creative makers with technology, but simply consuming it. And that's where it becomes really dangerous. So just have a critical eye, just have a critical mind behind what you're making, and think through it. And at the same time, be playful, because it does allow you to be playful and really iterate quickly, which I think can be really exciting for artists.
There's some really interesting stuff about AI and memorialization that I was thinking about yesterday, because somebody local to where I live lost their son in really tragic circumstances. And then I noticed, I don't know her at all, I know her through Facebook. And then there was all these images of her and her son that are AI images, and of him being in heaven and of him being like held by Jesus and stuff like that. And now that's not my sort of thing. But I can understand why that would. She'd made it, so she'd clearly.
That's fine.
She'd used images.
I thought other people.
No. Look, it looked like she'd made it herself. And I can understand somebody that's lost. I lost my father. It's not the same thing as losing a child, but like, what grief can do to you. In the same way that you can think of like the magic of everyday life, like when lots of people died in like say the American Civil War or the First World War, people got really interested in spiritualism because there was an idea about the magic about being in touch with those that you've lost. So I can see why AI might be useful in that way. And I suppose the difference, the key thing is that people know that it's not real. And I think that that's maybe a bit like spiritualism too, is that we might now look at that in 2026 and sort of go, but it wasn't real, or there were unscrupulous people. And I suppose that's where the danger is, if people forget that AI isn't a real thing, that it can be manipulated negatively as well as kind of benignly or even positively. It's really curious to me about how we don't interrogate things.
Can I say, as a retired criminal lawyer, all the things that you used to say to people about, well, if you've got evidence, or if you've got pictures of you being a different place, if you've got evidence to show, if you can show us this, if they did say that to you, give us the recording of it. Now anyone can have anything. And as a result of that, the whole idea of what is evidence that can be proved and legitimised and what can't becomes a whole new tricky area.
Claire, that was also really professional, because that linked back to spectral evidence.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got right off the topic, but anyway, we find ourselves in Paisley, and we find ourselves with your work.
and the fingers. So the fingers. So you can kind of see here behind me on the fingers on this representation, or this sort of reimagining of Christian Shaw as a businesswoman. The fingers are kind of messed up because that's just what AI does, and I left that. I did then use Photoshop to edit in the thread and some of the there's a spinning wheel behind her. So that's connected to well, I do want to say about this tapestry. So this tapestry was woven at a mill in North Carolina, just about an hour from where I live, called Pure Country Weavers. They also have a strand called Fiber Art, and they're really amazing. I've collaborated with them with my digital weaving class at UNC Asheville in the past. But I had family come visit. I had this sent to the mill in North Carolina. They printed it for me, and I had family visit, and they went and picked it up and then brought it over to me about a month ago. And so I have it for my exhibition here at GSA. But this company, they also make memorial blankets, which is really interesting because people will create blankets for a loved one that has passed, and then hand those out at the funeral as a memorial for people.
I think that's nice, and I love the idea. Like we've spoke about the tartan, there's something that the tactile feel of something makes you feel connected to it if it has a story or a person. So I think that's really, like yours.
Got my RSA'd behind me.
I think that's really beautiful. Can I just say, for those of us watching in portrait instead of long screen, when you watch this on the YouTube, you'll be able to see it. But if you're watching it on the long screen, you won't be able to see it. But hopefully we'll be able to get it up on video on YouTube.
And so her hands are the way they are, and that the other thing is the metahumans that I created. So these are created in the Unreal Engine, which is a game engine software that I'm using to build my game. When I do motion capture is when you use a camera to track someone's movement, and then you apply that to a 3D model. It was used in Avatar, the original, with the blue people and or the blue creatures,
not blue
and
pigs,
a lot of and many and the many blue boar, blue people. Anyway, many animated films have used motion capture, but I've used that to animate my metahumans, which represent the Paisley 8 and also Christian Shaw and other characters in this game that I'm creating. When the motion capture is done using a phone rather than a really high-end motion capture setup, it messes up the hands. So the hands end up being kind of clenched and not as specific finger movement. So you'll see that in my game. You'll see as the characters are spinning on the spinning wheels, their hands are kind of weird. And then one really exciting, I do want to talk about this other weaving that I did. So I was able to get into GSA's weaving studios, and they let me work on their TC2 jacquard looms.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to weave this, which will also be in the exhibition I'm having in July at GSA. But this was a digital weaving, and this represents Christian Shaw as a girl. So that first part of the story. So I'm looking at her as a girl, her as a grown woman. But this was woven, I wove this myself by creating a digital file and then passing a shuttle through a digital loom in an analog process. So it's analog and digital together. But I have been wanting to get a hold of one of these looms for many years and was thrilled to be able to work on that at GSA. So that was really exciting.
That's so cool. It's really cool. So you're building up to an exhibition in July, and is that something that the public can go to, or is it just people at the art school, or?
It is, yeah. So it's going to be it's a pop-up. There's going to be an opening on the evening of Saturday, the 4th of July from 5 to 7, and it'll be open that weekend. So Friday in the evening, Friday the 3rd of July, Saturday the 4th, and Sunday the 5th all day. And it's at the Windows on Heritage Gallery in the Reid building at GSA.
Right,
And
so
it's
that's
going to be called
in Glasgow. We'll put up links to that so people can find it.
Yeah, if near the time you can give us any links, we'd love to share them so people could go and see it, because it sounds amazing.
Because it's one of those things, the witch trials have a, there's a lot of people have an artistic response to it. And it's often maybe what I would think, and I don't know actually if this word is actually, as I'm about to say, I don't know if this is in current usage, so I'm sorry if this has now changed something that's better, but like outsider art or folk art maybe, or people that are not necessarily artists per se, but who feel compelled to do some sort of visual representation, particularly of, I think, of women's faces. We've seen some things of that, which is quite interesting. But I'm really glad to see you doing this sort of level of art with using this kind of technology and with all the training and everything that you've got. It's really interesting because it avoids some of the sort of the cliches of it. I think, we tend to get the same representations again and again, which is women in pain, and I think that although that's an enormous part of it, there's more complexity to be had in that situation.
I think we should start calling, in a derogatory fashion, sorry, Victoria, insider art in a kind of very off-putting way. Oh, that's insider art. Well,
Exactly.
It seems such a shame to make a differentiation between real artists and doing inverted commas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's responding to what happened with witch persecution, it's all relevant. I think it's all really important to showcase. But I do, with the work that I do with technology, I think there is an important aspect there to kind of bring it into the present and sort of think about how can things like algorithms maybe kind of compound, and our use of technology kind of compound these possibilities for persecution and for voices that are heard and not heard, and all of these sorts of things that happen. One other exciting thing that I was able to bring into the current project is I have a colleague at GSA School of Innovation and Technology, Daisy Abbott, who is in a a cappella singing group called Muldoon's Picnic. They're a Glasgow-based a cappella singing group. And Katie Lavinia Cooper is one of the members of the group. She was able to compose a song about spinning that's in the game. And so this a cappella group came into the studio and recorded this 5-part harmony singing this song about spinning that comes in and becomes kind of the rhythm of the game that I'm creating, that I'll showcase at the exhibition in July. So just being able to work with the amazing people at GSA, 3D modelers, just the folks that are around me, and kind of draw on those resources and just bring people in and make it kind of a collaborative effort to make the game has been really, really exciting.
It's really cool. Well, Victoria, it's been lovely speaking to you. We'll get the details of your exhibition that we can put up when we put up the podcast, and we'll put it on our social media as well if you'd like us to, and hopefully people will go along and see, because we know there is an enormous appetite for people to see art that's around the issue of the witch trials. It's nice to see this sort of new angle that you're doing with the games and things.
Absolutely. And speaking personally, I love technology. I embrace every new thing, and including with AI. What I found funny when Zoe was talking about AI was people were complaining, you've used AI and you've not used artists. And then we showed them that we had used artists, and they were university doing art and stuff like that, and they just moved.
It doesn't matter.
Your book's AI then, and you're like, no.
I understand. I think people are coming from a good place, and I think they're seeing AI as like the man, and that they're seeing that as being destructive. And I understand that, and the environmental cost is so incredibly, I don't understand how we get away from that. That's problematic.
And also, I think there's inherent of the inequality in AI, as Victoria.
Which I completely get it, but it just really pissed me off, because Rosie is a very good artist. She is absolutely a working artist. Rosie's ace, and she's at the beginning of her career, and just the fact that people would just say, oh, you're stopping a real artist. I mean, what is a real artist, first of all? And secondly, She is an artist. Like, you know, that's what
Sorry,
she does.
I've started this whole thing off again, Victoria. Victoria's like, I'm just here to talk about my own art.
But it's interesting though, because it is
Oh,
about
it is.
doing something that other people then will try and sort of isolate and shun people. And we're I've said this before to people, that you're replicating an aspect of the witch trials, is that you're taking somebody and you're going, I don't understand this. I'm angry with you. We need to deal with you. And that to me is really concerning. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other aspect, like with this piece, is, you know, there were a lot of gaps in history as well, and a lot of times business women weren't depicted when, you know, when they should have been. There should have been a portrait of her as this business owner, and so maybe we can go back and use some of these technologies to fill gaps and sort of.
Careful, Victoria. You'll bring down the wrath of Goodreads reviewers.
In a creative sense.
But the three of us will be rounded up, accused of witchcraft. People will be counting our fingers. All gone very strange.
They're all present and correct.
I know, you say they're all present and correct now, but when the video comes out, there'll be like 14 of them.
Right, we'll say cheerio for that just now. I think this has been really fascinating, Victoria. We look forward to seeing your work in real life. And we're delighted that we got a chance to have a chat with you today.
Oh, thank you both so much. This has been really fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome to this episode. We are going to be talking to some people today about something we think you should go and see if you get the opportunity to. I'm not going to mangle it by explaining anything. I'm going to ask Brandon Sharp, whose project I believe this is, to tell us why you're here today and what people need to know. Brandon, take it away. Hello.
Well, I'm Brandon. I run Headless Acting Theatre Company, and I've written a little play that we're in rehearsals for right now called The Seven Witches of Toryburn. And it's kind of just about the real life events from 1666 in Toryburn, Fife. And it kind of merges a bit into the story of Lilias Adey, which I assume some of people who are listening to this would have heard of.
Hopefully.
Who passed away in 1704. Those stories they kind of coincide together, and that's what the play's about, really. So you have to come along and see what's that.
And where is the play on?
Well, we will be performing throughout all of October, pretty much across Scotland. We're going to be in Kirkcaldy, Anstruther, Toryburn itself, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Dundee and Galashiels.
Well, that's a good spread, actually.
Yeah.
You're doing well there. And do you think you might get any other dates added on, or is that where you're at just now?
Probably not. I think that I kept adding dates before, and I think the cast were like, "Oh no, we're so busy."
Yeah, we have lives to lead as well. So speaking of the cast, we have three people here today. Maybe we could start with Nikki. Could you tell us who you are in the play, please?
Hi, yes, I'm Nikki Scott Mitchell, and I'm playing Margaret Horn. She's one of the slightly older ladies in the cast, in real life and in cast. But Margaret Horn was a midwife, and unfortunately she was deemed to be a witch by the church because one of the babies she delivered was stillborn. So yeah, that was where Margaret ended up being accused of being a witch. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's brilliant. And Ariana, who do you play in the play? Oh, I think you're mute.
There we go. My mic's is my work.
You're good now, yeah.
Perfect. So I'm Ariana McCulloch, and I play Mary Logan in the play, which is the Reverend's wife. She's quite an interesting character, I would say, because obviously she's not one of the witches as per se, but I think she's got a very beautiful story kind of tangled in with everything going on. And I guess it's kind of nice to see her side of the story a little bit, because again, normally it's just kind of she's the Reverend's wife, but yeah, it's lovely to hear her kind of story throughout the journey.
That's interesting, because in our book we've got fictional bits that are woven through the facts. And one of the characters that I wrote about was an imagined minister's wife and how she might feel about her husband being involved in that. So I thought that was an interesting person to look at, whether they would be entirely supportive if they could see things in a slightly different manner. That would be interesting. Thank you. And thirdly, we have Nicola. Who are you in the play?
Hi, I'm Nicola Anderson, and I'm playing the character of Christian May. Unfortunately, I tried to do a little bit of background digging into Christian, but unfortunately, like so many others, there's very little record left other than just a name and a date. And Christian in the play is being portrayed as a homeless woman. Now, in those days, I think homeless people and just poor people in general were often persecuted and one of the first ones to be accused. I mean, you just need to look at the Salem witch trials in order to see that.
Okay, so because she was unusual and didn't have the protection of society, she was a more vulnerable figure, I guess. Yeah, and also we often see stories, don't we, of people that are asking for alms and they're turned away, they're turned down, and they mutter, and then something goes wrong in the family's house, and it's that person that's then accused of being a witch. So that is unfortunately a very sorry, oft repeated tale. Brandon, why do you think people should come and see the play?
I think people should come and see this show because it's about real people. It's a real thing that happened. It's a horribly tragic thing that happened with so many average people, everyday people, people that you would call your friends nowadays, who were just being brutally tortured and murdered for so long for very little reason, if any reason at all. And I think that the world that we're living in today, there's a lot of similarities that can kind of mirror, like the powerful men ruling through fear and misogyny, and it's been what, 400, 500 years. How have we not changed? And I think this is a show that shows them as women and not witches, and not, in my opinion, not much these days shows stuff about witchcraft and all that without the magic, and just showing the hard facts of they were just people. They were just your mum, your granny, your auntie, your sister, your friend, your girlfriend.
Yeah. So there's just something that audiences today should be able to connect with and empathize with, and see that we're not so far away from that. These are people just like us. And of course, I'm from Fife, so it's very interesting to me that it's set in Fife. But I'm really glad that you're touring all over the UK. So when we put this episode out, all over Scotland, sorry, when we put this episode out, we'll put links to that so people can buy tickets and come along and see you. And who knows, at some point, Brandon, maybe you can persuade the cast to go further afield if they can fit it into their lives, which I'm sure is a massive demand. But we are delighted to have given you just a little bit of spotlight for this today, and look forward to when it's out in October. So look at the links, book your tickets, and go along and see it, because I think this will make the whole situation about the witch trials that much more sort of, understandable. It should connect you with what happened, if you're having any difficulty seeing these people as being the same as we are today, really. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having joined us for this episode 85. I feel like I should maybe say sorry for my enormous emotional sort of offloading earlier, but actually, I don't feel like apologising. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel any guilt about it. If you don't want to listen to it, that's okay. I suspect most people are listening to it probably going, fuck yeah, fuck no, fuck that. So I'm going to bring out a t-shirt saying that. But thank you so much for joining us. Just before we go though, Claire, just want to give you a quick bird update.
Oh yeah.
I've just come back from holidays. Everybody's fine. They all just, they did their own holidays. I'm not really sure. You know what the ravens are like. They're very secretive. Raccoons, I just left them a key to the car. It's fine. I don't know what's going to happen. But when I was on holiday, I went to Rhodes, and there were very few crows there, or ravens there. They're slightly different colour, but there's hardly any of them. But you know what there was loads of?
Hang on, let me guess. Silent space. Cats.
Well, yes, there were lots of cats, and as you know, I'm a cat person, and there was lots of really nice little cats that, if anybody's been to any Greek islands, you know that there's lots of feral cats, and there's usually somebody in the community who seems to be looking after them, and that was happening in Rhodes. It was lovely. Went to a place called Pefkos, highly recommend, very nice, good break. No, there was lots of swallows, and it was really nice because the swallows kept swooping over the swimming pool
and we're like landing on this like little box that was built into the side of the hotel. And it meant that I was actually able to get a really close-up look of what swallows look like in flight. So instead of being miles away in the sky, they were actually very close.
And for those who aren't watching, Zoe was gesticulating with her arm, and as she gesticulated, I saw the swallow on her arm, her tattoo.
I've got 3 of them. 3 swallows. I'm very fond of swallows for various reasons, but it was very nice and very peaceful. And up until about an hour and a half ago, I was feeling nice and relaxed, sort of post-holiday.
Is it possible that I bring it out in you, Zoe?
No, to be fair, no. You're just a really good supportive friend that I'm able to just wang on about things and get really angry, and you probably just go to somewhere in your head where you're thinking about, I don't know, hats or something, and then I just peter out, and then you go, okay, next thing, and it's fine, and you don't hold it against me. I just feel things, Claire. I feel things.
You feel
and
like
that's okay.
I feel things too, but in a much more reserved way.
Yes, yeah. I am what I am. Do you know what I mean? I'm 51 in a couple of weeks' time. I don't feel like there's an awful lot of changing left to be done.
Oh, come on now.
Well, like not in a like a.
No, you don't want to. Don't go changing.
I don't actually want to change. I don't want to go to jail though, so I'm going to have to rein it in a bit.
That's true.
Yeah, I am working on a guillotine though, but just
I thought you were going to say I am working on my rage, but no, you're working on a guillotine, Madame Guillotine.
Oui. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Please, if you don't already, follow us on our socials. We're on all the ones that you'd expect, I suppose. And also, if you haven't signed up for our Witches of Scotland gang, I'm just going to call it.
No,
it's not a gang. It's not a gang.
It's a clan.
It's a clan. I quite like. Anyway, so Witches of Scotland clan. Go to witchesofscotland.com. and you can sign up, and that means that you'll get newsletters now and then. Don't worry, we're not organised enough to be writing them in any particular speed or amount of time. It's just now and then. But if you want to sign up for that, then it means that you can be part of the clan for no cost. It's just, we just joined together. You're part of a nice community, and also that's where we do updates in advance for advances with the Tartan.
Yes.
So big news coming with that soon.
Exactly. So if there's big news about tartan products, we tell people there first. So do remember to go and sign up, because if you are interested in getting some of the memorial tartan, that is where you get the head start.
Yep. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my kilt on and I'm going to go for a furious walk up Newport-on-Tay.
Do it.
To the Berry's Den, which is like the park. Thing.
Do it.
And I'm going to eat a lion bar.
Listen, you know how to party.
I do know. Yes.
And so what? You will come back feeling so much better.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
If you'd like to learn more about the Witches of Scotland, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up for our mailing list at www.witchesofscotland.com to keep updated with the campaign. On that site, you'll be able to find how to link with us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.